I know a few good stories. They take place in a corner of America that might seem familiar, yet still manages to surprise. The settings are spectacular, the characters compelling, the action exciting, the plot lines unpredictable. I'm Tom Richardson. Join me as I explore New England's great outdoors, from Candlewood Lake, Connecticut to Caribou, Maine, from the beaches of Cape Cod to the peaks of New Hampshire's White Mountains. The stories are waiting. Let's live them on Explore New England. Explore New England is brought to you by your New England Ford dealers, your local REI co-op. REI believes a life outside is fundamental to a life well lived. Campers Inn RV, the RVer's trusted resource. And visitnewengland.com. Additional funding and support for this episode provided by Bangor Savings Bank. The old expression, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, is widely assumed to reflect a deeply entrenched Yankee sensibility that can also be associated with frugality and resistance to change. Just don't tell that to Marsden Brewer, a lobster fisherman in Stonington, Maine, who has introduced a method of scallop farming adopted from his counterparts on the other side of the world.
And how'd you learn it?
By going to Japan.
Really? So they sent you to Japan?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, there was a group that went over to Amori with a trade relationship. It's a relationship that survived 2 world wars and everything. And it started when an American ship ran aground over in Amori during a storm. And they lost a bunch of American sailors off it. Some of the local people got lost too, trying to help save the Americans. And it was after that they had a thing where they'd go back and forth between Amori to Bath, Maine with swimming competitions for years.
Really?
And then it morphed into more than that. With students, there's some students that go to Amori and there's a reciprocal thing there. They showed us, what the Japanese were doing with scallop culture and stuff and how they were set up. Mm-hmm. And it was really attractive because it was a lot of family operations. Mm-hmm. It was,
And like you're doing it with your son, so family operation.
Yeah.
After learning firsthand about the Japanese method of raising scallops, Marsden and his son Bob began employing the same aquaculture techniques in Maine waters. The results speak for themselves.
So while we call it lobster industry, there's 4,500 small businesses, and the Japanese do the same thing with scallop culture. These we grow them out in, but the way the operation works is we start out by catching the larvae. We'll spend better part of a year in the spat bag.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we'll set them, leave them down on the edge of the current for probably 10 to 12 weeks. Mm-hmm. And then we'll bring them up inside and put them and winter them over. Uh-huh. And then the next summer we'll take them out of the bags and start spreading them out.
Okay, and so how big are they when you take them out of the spat bags?
Oh, big ones as big as a nickel. Yeah, my grandfather was a lobsterman, my father was a lobsterman, and just naturally followed suit. What we're doing now is looking at aquaculture real hard, and in particular growing scallops. Seems to be going real good.
That's right. Yep. About a day ago.
How far out?
How many other fishermen in Stonington are doing the scallop farming?
We're the first.
The very first?
Yeah.
And are other people interested in doing it now because it's been successful?
They're starting to pay attention. This whole project, like with me at 63 years old, it's not about me. It's about the next generations. Mm-hmm. With all the wild fisheries that are going by the wayside, they've all been stressed. And we've got to find sustainable ways of doing things. And this is both regenerative and restorative to the environment. It's just all positive impact out of this. So yeah, it's worth it to pave the way for the rest of it. The big difference is with growing shellfish is that you're not just taking the wild stuff, you're taking larvae out of the water column and growing it up and selling it. And in that process, it's reproducing, making more scallops, so you don't have the environmental degradation. And with dragon, it does clear three-dimensional life off the bottom, restorative to the environment. They feed on phytoplankton in the water column, plankton, and they basically make the ocean cleaner and a better place. So it's a win-win for everyone.
Although the brewers can be considered scallop industry innovators in Maine, they still harvest lobsters in the traditional manner, by setting pots along the bottom. So far, no one has come up with a more efficient way of extracting the famous crustaceans from the ocean. You know what they say, if it ain't broke.
What we're looking for is, these are fairly big,
Yeah.
okay? The forward flipper, that means it's a male.
Okay.
A female would have a real fine. Leroy probably showed you that yesterday. So that's how we measure them from the back of the eye back. It's got to be bigger than that.
So that just made it.
Yeah, that's probably a pound and eighth lobster. And if you get them and it goes out over this backside, because they get quite big, and you throw it back.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Then you save that for brood stock.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's got to meet a lot of requirements.
Yeah, and that's part of what's made it a successful fish.
Sure. Yeah, and it can't have any berries on it, any eggs.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the V notch too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So we're gonna put.
So that one's a
I'll put him
keeper.
right there. Get through the rest of this stuff. Another male.
I went to this all day.
The lobster fishery is probably one of the best managed fisheries in Maine, and probably beyond that too. It's sustainable in that we watch out for our brood stock. Cedars, we throw them back, we V them so that they can reproduce again. We take them about 1.75 inches on the back of their shell. Is the only time of their life that we can take them. So, we get just a small crack at them. Working with my son has been great. A lot of the older people that have moved to the island, settled to the island, they're wicked jealous because their sons are off someplace else, another part of the world. And you take a week's vacation, you go down and see them, but just having your son working with you, it don't get any better than that. It's a good way of life, good community, good people.
Marsden Brewer is clearly excited by the aquaculture techniques he is helping to pioneer in Maine. In fact, he wanted me to taste for myself just how delicious his rope-grown scallops are, so he sent me home with a big bag of the bivalves. Best part was, he only had to go about a mile from the dock to get them. Occupying the southern half of Deer Isle, Stonington is about as picturesque a coastal village as you'll find in Maine. And perched over the water is the cozy inn on the harbor, which served as my home base for 2 nights. Built in the 1880s, the inn features 13 guest rooms and a whole lot of history. From the 1880s to the 1940s, the 4 buildings that now make up the inn housed various businesses, including a grocery store, a hardware store, Stonington's first telephone, a barber shop, the post office, and a fish market. They were later connected to form the continuous structure the inn occupies today.
So Jay and I are from Pittsburgh. We moved here from Pittsburgh, and we're looking for a change of careers. And for 3 years we looked for an inn, had a couple great inn brokers, and this was not on our radar for 3 years until I decided to quit my job. And so we had to make a move, and came one last tour up the coast, and our broker kept saying, go to Stonington, check out in on the harbor. And we were like, no, we don't want to be on an island. How do you get there? So we weren't finding anything that last tour through at looking at inns, and so we said, okay, we'll go down and look in Stonington, kind of like that. And we arrived here and we're like, oh, she was right. This is it. We knew as soon as we arrived here. We did have to do an awful lot of work, but it's kind of a labor of love at this point, and it's challenging, a little shocking when you realize all the work you have to do in regards to renovations and so forth. But we're getting there, and 4 years later, we're still loving it. Each day you get the opportunity to do it again and make it better. The thing I love most about Deer Isle and Stonington is it is authentic. A lot of guests are surprised that at 3:30 in the morning they hear the lobstermen going down the street to get into their dinghies to go out to their boats. That's authentic. So we have 13 rooms. One is a 2-bedroom suite with kitchen, living room, dining room, and wood stove, and 2 of our rooms have fireplaces. We are literally on the water. We're sitting on pilings. We're pinned to the shore. We don't really have any property that doesn't really have water under it. So we offer a breakfast with coffee and beverages, and usually quiche or cheesy biscuits or some sort of baked item. Many of our rooms offer a private deck as well, but we have an expansive decking on the front of the building and on the water. So even if you don't have a private deck, you have plenty of space to be on your own. So within walking distance in Stonington, there's a lot of options. We have what we call a walker's map, and it describes a lot of hikes that are right here in Stonington or throughout the island, and it describes the length of walk it is and the challenging level. We also have Maine Coastal Fisheries that has a touch tank and usually has a fisherman there giving stories and talking about the fishing industry. We also have 6 places that buy lobster from the lobstermen. So you can watch the boats come in and they sell their lobster to the pound, and then you can see the semis and trucks come in and pick up those lobsters. We also have some extraordinary restaurants. We have 2 cafes, and then we have 2 fine dining restaurants as well. And we have a little ice cream stand that has just the best lobster rolls. Every one of our guests says, best lobster rolls we've ever eaten. What I like best about being an innkeeper is the opportunity to learn from other people. We meet such a variety of different people from all over the world. It's amazing. And just the little bit of time that you get to spend with them, you learn from their experiences, such as shared experiences between people.
If you want to experience Stonington and its maze of islands from the water and learn a lot about the area in the process, book a trip with former Stonington Harbor Master Captain Steve Johnson and his first mate Boo aboard the Bert and I. After meeting Steve and Boo at the town docks, we headed for the 48-acre Green Island, home to a former quarry that now serves as an unofficial swimming hole. While I wasn't quite brave enough to take a dip in the chilly water, our cameraman Josh had no such qualms. The Green Island Quarry was one of many such operations that put Stonington on the map in the late 1800s, when granite was prized as a construction material. Indeed, Stonington granite was used to build Boston's Harvard Bridge, New York's Brooklyn Bridge, the Statue of Liberty, and Rockefeller Center. Today, granite quarrying continues at the Deer Isle Granite Company on Crotch Island.
So this is the crotch for Crotch Island, where they went into and did all the work. It goes all the way in, and you'll see polished granite in there left behind.
Now a preserve managed by the Maine Coast Heritage Trust, Green Island also features a short loop trail that winds through pine forest and makes for a pleasant hike. Back aboard the Bert and I, Steve, Boo, and I continued our tour of the local waters, with Steve dispensing information along the way.
There are dinghies here, and the lobstermen come out in their dinghies, get into their lobster boats, take off for the day, and come back and change boats again.
Yeah. And how many lobster boats are in Deer Isle?
Well, the island-wide is probably 400 plus registered moorings. Mostly commercial registered, some pleasure. Pleasure being sailboats.
But the vast majority are commercial.
Correct.
As I had learned during my trip with Marsden Brewer and Steve Johnson, Stonington is very much a working port. One local resident who isn't shy about telling others about the life of a commercial fisherman is Leroy Weed, who sold me some lobsters at the Green Head Lobster Company.
Are you Leroy?
I am. I was this morning.
Last time you checked, right?
The 82-year-old Weed is a lifelong waterman and raconteur who loves to teach others about the maritime way of life in Stonington. He often holds court at the Marine Center for Coastal Fisheries, where he educates visitors about the local fishing industry.
So you ship these all over the place?
All over the world. Yep.
Well, they certainly look lively enough.
Oh yeah, they're lively. Take the bands off, you'll find out.
Oh yeah, no thanks.
Put him in your back pocket. He'll be plenty lively. They mate when they molt, and that's probably the only time that bird is safe. Because if you haul a trap and it's got a female this big in there with eggs, and there's 10 more lobsters in there, they're all dead.
Oh really?
She'll kill every one of them.
Why?
She'd
protect
her
the eggs? No kidding.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh wow, no kidding. How do they kill each other?
With the claws when the bands are off.
Well, where do they get them? Like, how do you?
Oh, they bite them right in two.
Oh, they will.
Oh yeah. Oh hell yeah.
Oh jeez.
You take a 5-pound lobster, take this one right here and just
crunch it.
now he's 2 lobsters. So the claws are different. This is the crusher claw. This is the power claw. This one is always bigger than this one. Okay? So if they walk up behind the crab and grab him in the back, this is the claw that's going to kill him. This is the claw that's going to tear him apart. This one's got like the needle teeth on it.
Oh sure.
And it's very sharp. And right on the end, right there, you feel that.
Oh yeah, that's.
So if they get a dead fish on the bottom, and they get the claw in there and pull on it, they'll slice that right open. See? See that?
Oh, is that?
Oh yeah, they'll slice you.
Really?
Oh, big time.
Oh.
You get a 5-pounder and they get a hold of you. They'll break your finger.
I literally could have talked with Leroy all day, but I had to get moving. You see, I was taking my lobsters back on the water to a very special destination. Anyone familiar with mid-coast Maine knows that the inshore waters are dotted with islands. Lots of islands, some large, others just a half acre in size. What many people don't realize is that many of these islands are open to the public as part of the Maine Island Trail, which extends from Kittery to the Canadian border.
The Maine Island Trail was very much started as kind of a grassroots organization by a number of individuals in the state of Maine who really recognized all the islands up and down the coast as this kind of resource that no one was necessarily had the ownership of taking care of it, and so they started forging the path to what the trail is today. And it started with just the state-owned islands that were public anyway, so they all got put on the trail like right off the bat in the late 80s, and slowly they started approaching private landowners and other kind of conservation organizations asking if they wanted to also include their land on the trail. And since then, like I said, I think it was 30, I want to say it was 30 islands. That was kind of the first year that MITA published the guidebook, and now there are over 240 sites along the trail. So it's really been kind of an exponential growth, and people have really seen the value in keeping these places public and opening them up for public use. And it's a wonderful resource to the people of Maine.
I explored a small portion of the Maine Island Trail with Christina Hassett and 2 of MITA's many volunteers, Tim and Ellen Catcham. We met at the Colwell boat ramp adjacent to the Isle o' Ho ferry terminal and loaded our gear into a pair of MITA's aluminum skiffs, then headed into the archipelago of islands south of the Deer Isle thoroughfare. Whether you want to picnic on the beach or camp overnight, the Maine Island Trail system is open to all comers. In other words, you don't need to be a member, although donations to MITA are always appreciated. Our first stop was Rock Island, which features an inviting sandy beach and is a fairly short distance from the mainland. As such, it's popular among day trippers and makes a good destination for novice kayakers.
We just got to Rock Island, and this is one of those sites, MITA sites, that I mentioned before. It's actually owned privately by a private owner, but we've kind of cultivated this relationship, and they've agreed to open it up for public use, and then MITA kind of takes on the burden of stewardship. So we get volunteers out here and we clean the beaches and we maintain the campsite and the trails, and then folks come out, and I mean, we just had some folks who were using it when we got here.
And we scared them off.
Yeah, they're not here anymore, but yeah, people come out and camp. It's kind of a stone's throw away from Stonington,
right?
And so it's really accessible.
And this beach is spectacular, man.
It's
Look
a beautiful
at this
spot. Yes, it's very kind of quintessential Merchant Row.
Yeah, I'm tempted to go swimming, except that water feels like it's like 50 degrees.
A little cold, a little windy today, but yeah, we can go, take a little walk, and I can show you the campsites and the trails, and it's a beautiful spot.
Well, let's do that.
So when we come out here to maintain the islands, a lot of the trail work will bring out, we have some power tools, weed whackers and equipment like that, but a lot of hand tools, which is nice when you get a big group. Everyone can kind of have a tool with them. And then additionally, there are some islands that have, miles and miles of trails, and from year to year, there can be a lot more trail work, trees down, and we actually have a pretty robust group of volunteers that have been chainsaw certified, and will come out with chainsaws, and we're able to kind of clear the trails in ways that maybe the owner is not able to do themselves, so it's a real resource for them as well. Although MITA is a membership organization, you don't have to be a member of MITA to use these islands, and I think that's also kind of the beauty in it. And if you have a boat, if you have a safe way to get out here, all the owners, be it state or private, have consented to welcome everyone out to the island. So I grew up on the coast of Maine in Yarmouth, and spent a lot of time by the water. We had a power boat growing up, but I kind of got interested into other ways of getting out on the water, and actually did an apprenticeship at a boat building shop in Maine once I got out of college, and built a cedar strip kayak, and I paddled the trail myself. It was a remarkable trip. Being able to get out on the trail anywhere is just such a joy. This area is particularly beautiful with, the granite, and it has just such a multitude of islands. It's really like a paradise.
Visitors to any of the Maine Island Trail islands are reminded to pay close attention to the tides. This is critical. Fail to anchor your craft properly, and you may find yourself marooned until you can flag down a passing lobsterman. Also, take care to set up your tent well above the high tide line, or you might be in for a cold, soggy wake-up call in the middle of the night. As night fell on Steve's Island, our crew boiled up a big pot of seawater and feasted on local lobster, corn on the cob, and potatoes. A true Maine-made meal, and a fitting end to my most excellent Stonington adventure.